Welcome to beautiful Shadyside, Ohio, a sleepy little town that also happens to be the killer capital of the whole damn US of A, where every day could be your last. At first pass, it might seem like a painfully quiet place to live, but just wait until you meet the locals. Like Tommy, our resident axe enthusiast who runs the town summer camp, or up-and-coming musical artist Ruby Lane. She's got vocals that are to die for. But where did we find such a charming cast of characters, you might ask? Well, some folks say that it could be the work of a witch who made a deal with the devil himself. But I guess there's only one way to find out. After a freak accident, this group of unsuspecting teenagers is about to make an unbelievable discovery that could change everything. But beware, because the closer that they get to the truth, the more dangerous that things become. And before the curse is lifted, they're all going to die. Some a bit more horrifically than others. A half-dozen butchered bodies turning up every few months might make headlines anywhere else, but around here, they just call that your average Tuesday. And you never know who's next on the chopping block. So get comfortable, but not too comfortable, because this is going to be our biggest episode ever, with triple the horror, gore, and surprises in store. Get ready for 3 times the toil and trouble, and welcome to our first ever triple feature, where we're going to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the undead killers and the witch's curse, in all 3 Fear Street films. It's closing time at the Shadyside Mall, and after a long shift of dealing with annoying customers, this girl Heather is looking forward to heading home for the night. As she's going about her usual routine of restocking the shelves, she notices one of the books fall to the floor at the end of a dark aisle, and goes to put it back. What she doesn't realize is that she's about to end up in her very own horror story, with a plot twist that she'll never see coming. Just then, a shadowy figure rushes through the store behind her and knocks another book down from the shelf. But when she turns around, it seems like no one's there. The girl nervously makes her way back towards the register, when suddenly, a person wearing a skeleton costume lunges towards her with a knife, luckily only stabbing the book that she's holding. She manages to fight him off, slipping under the security gate and leaving the attacker trapped inside before running over to her friend's store for help, only to realize that he's nowhere in sight and the killer is closing in. Well, the pen may be mightier than the sword, but her stomach sure isn't, because the moment that she lets her guard down, the masked attacker grabs her from behind and slices her open. Wounded but still alive, she fights him off and ducks back into the aisles, using a strategically placed inflatable doll as a distraction, before walloping him over the head with a lava lamp and running for her life. Out in the food court, Heather realizes that several more employees are already dead, and she's about to become the next victim. Like a cheetah chasing down an injured gazelle, the killer closes the distance and stabs her straight in the back, taking her to the ground as he delivers the fatal blow. With her dying breath, she knocks his mask off and realizes that the attacker is actually her coworker Ryan, only for him to immediately be shot by Sheriff Nick Good, who seems to have arrived just moments too late. That makes 1 victim down, with 6 more to go, but there's more to this story than meets the eye. Okay, getting chased down by a knife-wielding maniac is absolutely horrifying, but with that being said, out of all of the areas where you might have to do battle with a serial killer, a shopping mall would probably be my top pick. Although it's going to be hard to think clearly under so much pressure, the most important thing to remember here is the objectives for survival are simple. And they are: avoid being stabbed long enough to either incapacitate the killer, lose him, or give help time to arrive. If you stay focused and make smart tactical decisions, then you just might make it out of this alive. The only problem is that Heather kept missing her other best opportunities. For starters, when Skull Mask came after her in the bookstore, she managed to get away from him by sliding under the security gate. This seems like it would slow him down, but the truth is that since the gate was jammed and couldn't be fully locked, all that he had to do was quickly lift it up to continue his pursuit. On the flip side, instead of immediately running away, what Heather could have done here was just run to the opposite side where he was standing and continue holding the gate down. Due to the way that it's designed, Skullface wouldn't be able to grab Heather, slash her, or even get a good stab in, rendering all of his attack options completely useless, as long as she can continue to keep him in this stalemate. Then all that's left to do is wait for help to arrive. There's also the chance that he'll get bored and decide to go for another exit, giving you a window to escape, or even somehow screw up and create an opportunity to disarm him or knock him out. After putting some distance between them, Heather actually managed to make it to a phone and call the police. She may not have had time to tell them exactly what was going on, but the dispatcher made it clear that they were going to send officers to respond right away, meaning that from the moment that the call was placed, it was only a matter of time before police arrived to get control of the situation. However, in the state of Ohio, where the town is located, police response times can still be over 10 minutes for a priority 1 call, which is an incident where there's immediate threat to life. This means that Heather was essentially on her own, leaving her with 2 options: escape or fight back. Now, this is when it's time to use the environment to your advantage. Heather here thought to run for the novelty gift store because she thought that her friend Ryan would be able to help, never once realizing that he was actually the one chasing her down the whole time. Sure, having Ryan as a meat shield here would be great, but if it were me, I would have just made a beeline straight for the store with the samurai swords and gone dead rising on his ass instead. Yes, I know what you're thinking, those swords are more for display than anything and would probably break with just a few swings. But ask yourself this: if you were being hunted down by a creep in a costume, would you rather have a crappy sword or no sword at all? Personally, I'm going sword all day long. Although a lava lamp wouldn't have been my first choice for a weapon, it sure did get the job done. And Heather here might have actually survived if she didn't make one fatal mistake. We know from watching Terrifier that you never, and I mean never, give the killer a chance to get up when you have them on the ropes. Once he was down, she should have used the lava lamp or even his own knife against him to finish the fight. Also, stores like this one usually sell novelty handcuffs for reasons, which she could have used to restrain him while he was briefly unconscious, giving her the chance to run for the nearest emergency exit and make it to safety if she wasn't ready to take him out the old-fashioned way just yet. Unfortunately, it looks like Heather's days of working retail are over. It's time to meet our next group of teenagers, and hopefully, they can do better. The next day, this girl Dina and her brother Josh are getting ready for school. While she's been brooding about a relationship turned sour, he's been chatting online with babes all morning, and they've come to the conclusion that there's a conspiracy afoot. According to him, although the news is more than happy to report on the killings, they refuse to cover the most important part: the curse of a witch named Sarah Fier, who's been possessing countless Shadysiders for centuries, and led them to go on these horrifyingly violent rampages year after year. That afternoon, Dina and her friends head to a football game in Sunnyvale, the neighboring town which seems to have caught a W for every one of Shadyside's L's. There, she sees her ex-girlfriend Sam smooching it up with her new man and storms off to pout somewhere out of sight. After a moment, Sam comes to find her, and while they're busy arguing about who broke whose heart, the always classy, never trashy Sunnyvalers turn the candlelight ceremony for the victims into a full-blown brawl. On the bus ride home, the Shadysiders are fired up and ready for war. That's when they notice a car full of mask-wearing troublemakers chasing them down, and in the passenger seat is none other than Sam herself. As an act of revenge, they open the back escape door and get ready to dump a bunch of sugary sports drink all over them. But that was their biggest mistake. At the last second, Dina gets a sudden nosebleed that causes the cooler to slip out of their hands, crashing into the windshield and sending the car careening off of the road. Sam's the first to crawl out of the wreck and right into a large patch of strange red moss. She seems alright, but when the blood from her nose touches the soil, she instantly begins having terrifying visions of ancient witchcraft snapping out of it when Dina comes and grabs her hand. While the paramedics load Sam into an ambulance, the sheriff arrives and begins interviewing everyone at the scene. But the kids all cover it up as if it were just a freak accident. They don't realize it yet, but they've just stumbled right into a living nightmare. And this time, not everyone is going to make it out alive. Okay, talk about a close call. She could have just let it go, but now thanks to a schoolyard prank gone wrong, it looks like they've just unleashed a centuries-old death curse on poor, unsuspecting Sam here. Well, I hope it was worth it because Dina, you up! I get it, getting broken up with sucks. After seeing your ex with her new preppy man from the rival town, it's understandable that you were heartbroken and felt the need to retaliate, but nearly committing voluntary manslaughter ain't it, chief. First of all, it just wasn't that serious. I mean, who cares if some punks want to throw stuff at your school bus anyway? That sounds like the bus driver's problem, so let them deal with it. When emotions are high and you've got revenge on your mind, the best thing that you can do is go home, get some rest, and come up with a plan in the morning if you're still so heated about it. The minute I realized what you had in mind, I knew that cooler was going straight into their windshield. That's a little bit more than just a prank, bro. You could have easily killed all three of them. And then, not only would you be spending decades in prison, but if and when you finally got out, you'd still have to live the rest of your life regretting what you have done. Luckily, everyone survived, but that doesn't mean that you're off the hook. You had no way of knowing this, but you're about to find out that the spot where they crashed was right on top of the unmarked grave of a vengeful witch. And now Sam here is going to be her next target. Congratulations on opening up a whole supernatural can of worms. Maybe next time you'll just move on with your life, but now it's time to deal with the consequences of your actions. And they're going to be so much worse than you could have ever expected. Dina, you up. The next night, Dina and her friends Kate and Simon are tormented by someone wearing a skull mask, who they suspect must be Sam's new boyfriend, Peter. While babysitting at a neighbor's house, they catch the creep breaking in and rummaging through their laundry, seeming strangely interested in a shirt stained with Sam's blood, but he escapes through a window before they can confront him. Furious, they decide to go visit Sam at the hospital and tell her to get her man under control before things go too far. Dina goes in alone to confront her, but that's when Peter comes in from the next room with Sam insisting that he's really been there all night. He's excited to be getting out of the hospital soon, but wouldn't be if he knew that the only place he's going is the town morgue. While the girls are throwing around insults, he's suddenly stabbed straight through the gut by the real skull mask killer, making 2 victims down, with 5 more to go. The girls run for their lives and take cover behind the reception desk, with the killer seemingly uninterested in anyone besides them, unless an innocent bystander gets in his way. This explains what happened to the receptionist, who's slumped over in the corner with her throat slashed. And when another nurse tries to stop him, the killer stabs him in the neck with no hesitation, before turning his attention back to Dina and Sam. As the girls fight him off, the killer's mask happens to slip, revealing that it's actually Ryan himself once again, although he should be very dead based on the bullet wound right between his eyes. At the last second, their friends rush them off in a stolen ambulance, with Ryan watching as they speed away. The girls go straight to the police station to report what happened, but the officers refuse to believe their story. Meanwhile, Simon walks around the corner to water the town plants, where he sees a strange young woman sitting alone under a streetlight. He gets closer to see if she needs help, when suddenly, she pulls out a shaving razor and slices him across the ankle. The fight spills out into the street, but just when it's starting to look bad for Simon, Dina shows up and blasts the woman with a revolver that she swiped from one of the officers. Despite being shot straight through the head, the woman sits up and quickly starts to regenerate, causing the others to drop the weapon and run for their lives. Back at the house, Josh reveals that the woman was actually Ruby Lane, another Shadyside killer who went on her own rampage some 30 years before. Over the years, there have been dozens of ordinary people who committed horrifying murders for seemingly no reason, tracing all the way back to the 1600s when the witch Sarah Fear was hanged for her alleged crimes. Josh believes that the witch has been using her power to possess innocent people and take her revenge. But even if this is true, Kate here can't understand why she's coming after them. That's when Sam confesses that she saw the witch after her car crash, which must mean that now the two of them are somehow connected. Searching for answers, they decide to head back to the scene of the accident. As Sam reenacts what happened, they discover some long-buried remains chained to the earth beneath the moss, with a nearby padlock revealing that they've just stumbled upon the body of the witch herself. In a surprising moment of intelligence, Simon suggests that they give the woman a proper burial, but as they're wrapping up the body, Sam's nose begins to bleed. Sure enough, a drop gets on one of the bones, sending her into another bad trip with the witch calling out, "It's you." Suddenly, another mask-wearing killer comes storming out of the darkness, ignoring everyone else and going straight for Sam. Luckily, Dina pulls her out of the way just in time, and they speed off in the ambulance with the attacker hot on their heels. As they're driving home, everyone begins to argue about what they should do, which is when Sam points out that the killers are only targeting her. Anytime that someone else was attacked, it was only because they had some of Sam's blood on their clothing, or tried to get in the killer's way. That's when Josh comes up with a plan, realizing that if the killers aren't going to stop coming after her, then the next best thing to do is to use Sam as bait and lure them into a trap. Okay, this just got crazy fast. It seems like Sam here is the key to the puzzle, and using her as bait to trap the killers is a great idea, but there's just one problem. We've seen from their interactions with Skullmask and Ruby that they have the power to regenerate, which means that physical damage only temporarily takes them down. Because of this, putting a lot of effort into trying to kill them most likely won't be worth it, and instead they should focus on finding a way to disarm and restrain them while they figure out how to approach the root of the problem, which is lifting the witch's curse. If they're going to try to trap them, then they should do their best to make sure that they choose a place where it would be almost impossible for the killers to get out, like luring them into the cells at the town jail and locking them inside. It's going to be tough to get free reign of the police station with the officers around, but since Dina here managed to steal one of the revolvers without them noticing, I'm sure that it wouldn't be too hard to distract whoever happened to be working the desk while they use Sam's blood or herself to lure them into the cells and lock them up. As it stands, the killers are the most immediate threat, but they're also only a symptom of the true problem. Just like Sam pointed out, this all started when she disturbed the witch's grave site, which is how they've come to find themselves in their current predicament. So if you were cursed by the spirit of a vengeful witch and her undead minions, what could you do to survive? Luckily, Dina and her friends here already know exactly where to find the body, but since giving her a proper burial didn't work, my next instinct would be to return to the site and burn what's left of her to see if that does the trick. Could it make things worse? Maybe, but you never know until you try, and if that didn't work, then it'd be time to look at some more creative solutions. In the olden days, burning certain herbs like wormwood, mugwort, and vetiver, which can be purchased at most botanical stores, was said to be one way to lift a curse. Alternatively, they could try using a binding spell to convert the evil energy into positive energy, which involves writing the witch's name into a candle and reciting a particular phrase as it burns. Whatever they choose, they better do it quickly, because it won't be long before the undead killers return to finish the job. Now, in terms of purely practical solutions, since we know that the curse is based around Shadyside, it couldn't hurt to try simply moving Sam as far away from the town as possible to test the boundaries. It's possible that the witch's spell loses its power the farther away that you get, and if that's the case, then it'd be easy enough to just have Sam here leave town and never come back. Sure, she'd be leaving the place where she grew up and everything that she knows, but personally, I'd rather take my chances finding a new place to live than having to contend with unrelenting zombie murderers just to stay in a small town Ohio. If all else fails, then there's one thing that's guaranteed to work. Give Sam up to the killers, effectively using her as a meat shield so that everyone else can live in peace. This would be probably more like a band-aid than a permanent solution, but at least the killings would stop for now, and give the others a chance to get the hell out of town before the witch strikes again. After coming up with a plan, they sneak into the school and split up into groups, changing into the clothes from the lost and found and carefully wiping off any of Sam's blood that might still be on them. Except for Sam, of course, who actually can't get rid of her own blood without, becoming dead. She and Dina squash their beef and make out, and even though Josh here gets a little smooch from Kate, there's no time to waste. And the group quickly meets back up in the hall, ready to put their plan into action. Using a bucket of Sam's blood as bait, they leave trails leading all the way through the building and back to the bathroom. There, they've already dumped several gallons of volatile chemicals, ready to torch the killers the minute that they step inside. Within moments, the killers converge on the the building, following the blood trails just as planned. Nervous, they wait until all 3 of the psychos pass straight by them and into the bathroom, slamming the door shut behind them while Sam escapes through an air vent above one of the stalls. As soon as she's clear, the others tie the door shut and ignite the trail of chemicals, incinerating the killers in a huge ball of flames before going in and extinguishing the fire once they think that the coast is clear. They're riding high on the thrill of victory, but unfortunately it won't be for very long, because while they're cleaning up, the ooze starts to take shape again, forming into a hand that reaches right for Josh. Terrified, they run to a nearby classroom and barricade themselves inside, now forced to come up with a new plan, since even total destruction doesn't seem to do the trick. Now that they're cornered, Kate finally says what everyone else was too scared to admit. Instead of fighting, handing Sam over might be the only way for this nightmare to ever end. Seeing no other option, she's willing to sacrifice herself if that's what it'll take. But at the last minute, Josh gets another idea. Out of all of the attacks over the years, there's only ever been one survivor, a local woman who claims to have seen the witch and somehow lived to tell the tale. Acting quickly, they find her number in the phone book and decide to call her house, leaving her a message when the woman doesn't pick up the phone. Meanwhile, Sam continues reading over the news reports and realizing that the woman actually did die, but was resuscitated by a friend, after which the attacks seemed to stop. Thinking that this must be the key to lifting the curse, they decide to try killing Sam on their own terms before bringing her back to life, escaping through a window just as the axe-wielding killer crashes into the room. Okay, that was a great attempt, but the hard truth is that they should have known it wouldn't work. Since the killers are already dead and have the power to regenerate, even completely burning them won't get rid of them for good. Trapping them works for a little while, but it seems like the witch has a borderline unlimited roster of monsters in her deck to choose from, which means that for every one that they manage to lock up, 2 more will come to take its place. From their perspective, this makes handing Sam over or killing and reviving her seem like the only 2 options that they have left. But I've got one more idea that's so crazy that it just might work. Whatever the reason is, we know that the killers are specifically attracted to Sam's blood like bees to honey. For everyone else, they can avoid being targeted by simply not coming into contact with any of the girl's blood. But for Sam herself, the situation is a bit more complicated. Surely there's nothing that she could do about having her own blood in her body, besides dying, of course. Well, that's where they're wrong. The solution is simple: a full exchange transfusion. For this plan, let's treat Sam's blood as if it's been infected by the witch's curse. In the medical world, there are 2 types of blood transfusions that each serve different purposes. A simple transfusion is the most common. These involve adding additional blood without removing any, and are most often used for patients with potentially fatal injuries. An exchange transfusion is exactly what it sounds like, replacing the patient's blood with whole donor blood, and is used in the treatment of blood diseases like sickle cell disease. So here's what they need to do. Step 1 is return to the hospital and acquire approximately 5 or 10 units of appropriate donor blood, as well as a transfusion kit, which should have all of the necessary materials inside, and even detailed, easy to understand instructions for performing the procedure. Then they need to load Sam into the back of the ambulance and carefully drive her around town for as long as it takes to flush all of her blood out of her system, while gradually replacing it with the donor blood. Since the killers can only travel on foot, keeping Sam moving in the ambulance should render them unable to reach her, giving them all the time that they need to complete the process without being attacked. The others could even take it and use it as a means to lure the killers even further away, and shouldn't be in any danger themselves as long as they don't get any of it on their clothes. It's a long shot, sure, and it could end with her dying horribly if they make a mistake, but since they're already planning to kill her and bring her back with CPR anyway, it couldn't hurt to try this idea first. For now though, it looks like they're dead set on killing their friend and hoping for the best. It's a bold move. Let's see if it pays off. It's time for the final showdown, and this time they head to the supermarket, where Simon supplies them with everything that they'll need. A few months ago, his younger brother ended up taking too much prescription medication and was dead for 2 minutes. Although the emergency responders were able to bring him back. Using similar substances, they arrange them in a way that should do the same thing to Sam here, with EpiPens ready to revive her once it's all over. The others mark themselves with her blood so that they can serve as a distraction, splitting up to cover each entrance, while they wait for the substances to take effect. It begins to work, but just before Sam passes out, she ends up vomiting, her body rejecting the substances and purging them out of her system. Suddenly, Skull Mask lunges at them from the darkness, but Kate wards him off with an impromptu flamethrower that she's made out of an aerosol can, buying the girls a chance to escape while she takes cover behind a counter nearby. Chasing her down, the killer grabs Kate by her hair, and although she puts up a good fight, this is a battle that she can't win. Overpowering her, he stabs her deep in the stomach before forcing her head into the cake-cutting machine, and making 3 victims down, with 4 more to go. Meanwhile, Simon and Josh manage to escape from their attackers, ending up right at the spot where Kate has just been killed. They're both frozen with shock after seeing her body, but at least Simon won't have to be scared for too long. Because while he's distracted, the axe-wielding killer rushes in from behind and buries his weapon deep into Simon's skull, making 4 victims down with 3 more to go. With no other choice, Dina begins drowning Sam in the store's lobster tank, finally managing to kill her just as the attackers are about to finish them off. It works, and the psychos disappear without a trace, but now they'll have to revive her before it's too late. In a panic, Dina hits Sam with every EpiPen that they have, miraculously bringing her back to life after performing CPR. Although they've paid a heavy price, it seems like the curse is finally lifted. After sticking to their stories at the police station and covering up the truth about what really happened, they all go back to Dina's house for some much-needed relaxation, only to receive a mysterious phone call. It's Christine Berman, the only other survivor of a witch attack, and she's got some bad news. According to her, they might think that they've won, but the witch will keep coming after them no matter what they do. Just then, Dina turns around to see Sam standing behind her. At first, she's relieved, but quickly notices that something's wrong when the girl pierces her stomach with a sharp wooden stick. Despite this surprise shanking, she manages to overpower her friend and ties her up with the phone cord before going to get her brother. Clearly, the witch's curse is still going strong, leaving them with no choice but to track down the last survivor and find a way to destroy the evil at its root. An adventure that will take them back in time to an ancient era before modern technology, when dinosaurs still walked the earth. Summer Camp, 1978. Okay, and that's a wrap for Fear Street Part 1, but stick around because coming up next, we've got a Friday the 13th fever dream, with a surprise twist that brings us even closer to what's really going on beneath the surface here in Shadyside. There's going to be action, horror, romance, and even a giant beating heart buried deep underground. Yeah, things are about to get trippy, so grab your bell bottoms and buckle up, because it's time for The story picks up right where we left off, with this woman Christine meticulously locking up every possible entrance to her house, as you reasonably might after surviving a witch curse, and spending the rest of your adult life in a town that's constantly plagued by unprovoked and inexplicable serial killing sprees. Some hours later, she falls asleep on the couch, only to be awakened by a panicked knocking at her front door, and flashlights shining in through the windows. Fearing for her life, she tries to hide and wait them out, but someone manages to get inside, sneaking in through the only window that she forgot to lock. Luckily, it's only Dina and her brother, and they've come looking for her help. At first, the woman insists that their only option is to give up and run for their lives. But when Dina pleads with her to help them save Sam, she finally agrees to tell them what she knows. After bringing the girl inside and tying her up in the bathroom, the others gather around while Christine begins her story. It was early July, 16 years ago, their first day at a summer camp. Before the week was over, her sister and several others would be killed. This year's trip to summer camp starts out just like any other, with a witch hunt, of course. Ziggy here isn't like the other girls, so they've decided to chase her down and put her on trial for her crimes. with her nose still bleeding from being absolutely clotheslined by their Ken companion. They drag her over to the tree where the witch was hanged and string Ziggy up by her wrists, accusing her of being possessed. The other kids blame her for everything that's been going wrong at camp, and they decide to kick her out entirely until this counselor, Nick, stands up for her, convincing them to let her stay as long as she promises not to cause any more trouble. The thing is, trouble has a way of finding Ziggy here. Naturally, when she goes to the nurse's tent to get her injuries treated, the woman is nowhere to be found. The door to her office is cracked open though, and inside, Ziggy discovers something essential to every summer camp nurse's toolkit: a book of forbidden knowledge, opened to a page showing the witch's mark. This is not groovy, but there's no chance to sneak back out because the nurse has been right behind her the whole time. The good news is, she's nice. That is, until Ziggy asks her about the whole Necronomicon thing. Then things take a dark turn. You see, this is Nurse Lane, mother of Ruby Lane. Yes, that Ruby Lane. The one who killed 7 of her friends and came back from the dead to attack Dina and company all those years later. Talking about her daughter makes Nurse Lane a bit cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, because she doesn't believe that her sweet, innocent Ruby could have just gone berserk for no reason. In fact, she thinks that the witch, Sarah Fear, possessed her daughter and made her do it, which she calmly explains while providing medical attention to this increasingly nervous child. Luckily, the girl's prissy older sister, Cindy, shows up to get her before things take a turn for the worse. But it's out of the frying pan and into the fire for Ziggy here, who immediately gets an earful about her alleged witchy behavior. After going their separate ways, Cindy is still so heated up that she tears a sponge in half while doing her counselor duties, and decides to go to the pantry to cool off. While rummaging through some supplies, she notices a shadowy figure pass by behind her, thinking that it must be her golden retriever boyfriend, Tommy. Sure enough, she ends up finding him out in the mess hall, but he's just as confused as she is. And that's when they realize that they're not alone. Nurse Lane's been watching them from the shadows, which suddenly explains the open knife drawer back in the kitchen. This time, she's not here to give stitches. She's here to cause them, and the woman lunges straight for Tommy, nearly stabbing him in the neck. Luckily, he's able to overpower the nurse and knock her out, sustaining only a small head wound in the process. Okay, someone call a nurse for the nurse. She's gonna need it after that picnic bench beatdown. It's a good thing Tommy here is a better wrestler than Nurse Lane was a killer, because he would have been dead meat if it weren't for those surprise hand-to-hand skills. Hey, Cindy, I don't know if you realize this, but it is in fact possible to do something besides just stand there like a deer in headlights, while your boyfriend is about to take a 10-inch kitchen knife straight to the jugular. Honestly, if this guy doesn't dump you after that one, then he might actually be dumber than he looks. The lid of that garbage bin near the door would have made for a great Captain America shield to block her knife attacks, or frisbee toss into her neck. Flip that bin upside down, and you could easily jam it over the top of her head, effectively trapping her inside and making it much more difficult for her to attack. Hell, even the salt and pepper shakers on the table could have been some nasty projectiles to pelt her in the side of the head with. Anything besides freezing up and doing nothing at all would be preferable next time, and I think that Tommy here would definitely agree. Speaking of Tommy, this seems like an oddly specific attack to happen for no apparent reason. I mean, if the nurse had just snapped and was going on a violent rampage with no particular target in mind until she got there, then why wouldn't she have attacked Cindy while her back was turned? No. She singled out Tommy, even saying that he was going to die tonight either way. And this, combined with the fact that her daughter was a former killer, is definitely a clear warning sign to me that everything isn't as cut and dry as it seems. I see trouble on the way for Tommy here, and it's going to be pretty hard to keep having fun at camp after getting in a knife fight with the nurse, even if he managed to get out of it with only a minor concussion. Right now, my advice would be to call it quits and just go home, or at least lock himself in his cabin for the night, get some rest, and regroup in the morning. As for Cindy, she might be able to redeem herself by going to the nurse's office to have a look around. Maybe she's right, and the nurse took some substances that made her go crazy. Or perhaps, just perhaps, this is all related to that mysterious book of dark arts that her sister found sitting right out in the open on the woman's desk. There's only one way to find out. So while her boyfriend is sleeping it off, Cindy should head over there and see what's really going on. Later that afternoon, Tommy here seems to be having some trouble focusing after that bump to the head. He's had a couple of episodes of zoning out and hearing voices, so Cindy decides that they need to figure out what caused Nurse Lane to attack so that they can get to the bottom of it. While Ziggy is convinced that it's all related to the Shadyside curse, Cindy thinks that there must be a more logical explanation, and the answer could be hidden somewhere in the nurse's office. After sunset, she and Tommy break into the building searching for clues, which is when he finds the notebook describing Sarah Fier's deal with the devil. According to the legend, the witch chopped off her own hand on a sacrificial stone in exchange for her dark powers, and the curse can only be reversed after her hand and body are reunited once again. Just then, they hear glass break from somewhere in the other room, but it's only their degenerate friends, Alice and Arnie, who came there looking for some substances to steal. In the confusion, they end up snatching the nurse's diary, and inside they find a map showing the location of the witch's house. Thinking that it sounds like a scary good time, Alice and Arnie run off to go find the place with Cindy and Tommy in close pursuit, but that was their biggest mistake. Darkness falls, and Cindy hears Alice scream out from somewhere in the woods. It turns out that she accidentally stumbled into a gravesite where Nurse Lane was digging in search of the witch's missing hand. Nearby, they find a hidden chamber underground full of strange artifacts and recently burned candles. Ducking through a small doorway in the back of the room, the girls discover another chamber where the witch's mark is carved into the stone in the middle of the floor. The situation is already looking bad, but things are about to get so much worse. On a wall at the back of the chamber, Alice notices a long list of names carved into the stone. Every single one of them is a former Shadyside killer, and at the bottom is the most recent, Thomas Slater, Cindy's harmless boyfriend, but he won't be so harmless for long. While the girls are busy talking about what this could mean, Arnie here has already gotten bored and gone back to check on Tommy in the main room. Although he was fine a minute ago, the guy is suddenly unresponsive until he grabs an axe and buries it into the top of Arnie's head, making one victim down, with 10 more to go. The girls scream as Tommy turns on them, fleeing back into the ritual chamber and through a secret passageway, hidden behind a bookshelf that leads deeper into the caves. As they're crawling through, Tommy grabs Cindy by her ankle, and although she manages to kick him off, the scuffle causes a cave-in that blocks off the chamber, leaving them safely out of the killer's grasp, but trapped deep underground with no idea how to escape. Okay, who could have seen this coming? Well, besides anyone who was paying even the slightest bit of attention. These girls just walked right into their own living nightmare like they were following the yellow brick road, and then acted oh so surprised when everything went horribly wrong. I've got some bad news for you, Cindy and Alice. You f***ed up. So let me get this straight. There is a rumor going around that your town is cursed by the spirit of an angry witch. A rumor that you most likely don't believe because, I mean, really, what person over the age of 12 genuinely believes in something like that without any hard evidence? But you see, that right there is the problem, because you found an entire book of evidence owned by a woman who just went completely psycho and tried to kill Tommy here, and your reaction was to go check it out? Get serious for a minute. One thing that you know for sure is that random, unsuspecting people from your town seem to go on yearly homicidal rampages with no warning or explanation. So maybe it'd be better not to go poking around at the place that you think might be the very source of the murderous urges. As if the book wasn't enough of a warning sign, you found a ritual chamber with all kinds of witchy evidence, including a whole ass blood altar with the flames still burning. And it never once occurred to you that it might be a good time to run for your lives? I thought at least Cindy would be smarter than that. But wait, there's more. Carved into the solid rock wall is a list of each and every killer who's ever gone on a slaying spree here in Shadyside. And who's the most recent name on the list? Why, it's none other than Tommy himself, the guy who's standing just in the other room right now. Hey Alice, here's an idea. Instead of slowly going through the names like you're reading them out of a phone book, maybe try getting to the point before the guy starts chopping campers down like George Washington when he sees a cherry tree. If you reacted more quickly, then you might have been able to save Arnie's life, and the three of you could have gotten the jump on Tommy here before the possession fully took hold. Clearly, he's about to do some horrible things if you let him go. There's dozens of innocent campers out there who have no idea what's coming, and Cindy's younger sister happens to be one of them, so needless to say, this is kind of an urgent situation for everyone involved. But now, the only 4 people who know what's going on are dead, possessed, or trapped in a cave deep underground. Way to totally blow it. At least now you two will be safe, if you can survive long enough to be rescued. But for everyone else, their nightmare is just about to begin. When you let your curiosity lead you right to the source of the cause, only to completely drop the ball when you had the chance to stop it, Alice and Cindy, you f***ed up. Meanwhile, back at camp, Ziggy and Nick come up with a plan to get back at this girl, Sheila, for trashing her cabin and calling her a witch. Pretending to be her crush, they trick her into thinking that he wants to meet up at the most romantic place of all, the camp latrine. But instead of a stinky makeout session, what she gets is a bucket of insects dumped on her head, while Ziggy and Nick trap her inside and scamper off into the night, having just become best friends. There's someone else looking to play some pranks on the campers though, and his idea of a good joke is just a little bit different. The campers are in a heated game of capture the flag, and after a gang of Sunnyvalers eggs the other team's jailer to free their friends, the kid cleans off his glasses only to see Tommy storming towards him with an axe in hand. He's powerless to fight back, and that makes 2 victims down, with 9 more to go. The sounds of screaming campers interrupt Ziggy and Nick as they're making out back at the reptile house. After discovering the body of Tommy's latest victim, everyone officially realizes that there's a killer on the loose, and they need to get things under control before he has the opportunity to strike again. Back down in the cave, Cindy is trying to come up with a plan, but Alice has lost all motivation to go on after seeing her boyfriend cut down by a maniac. After following a path that only leads her right back in a circle, she realizes that the symbol from the notebook is actually a map of the tunnels. Together, the girls set out towards the center chamber, where they find something truly horrific, an enormous, pulsating heart that seems to be growing right up from the stone. That's when Alice here decides to do the worst possible thing that she could in this situation, and places her hand right onto the fleshy mass, which, of course, floods her mind with terrifying visions of the killer's past victims. Panicking, she runs headlong into the darkness, tripping over a rock and snapping her ankle so badly that the bones are poking through her skin. Okay. This is completely horrifying, but it also opens up what's probably the best opportunity that they've had so far. First of all, and this should probably go without saying, but never put your hands on the giant beating heart buried deep underground. There is virtually no other potential outcome for doing this than to spiral down the rabbit hole of utter insanity. So if you've ever done some unplanned spelunking and see some shit like that, it's best to treat it like the wild animals at a national park, and look, but don't touch. Now with that being said, if I was a better man, then I'd confidently wager that right there is the source of the town's problems, or at the very least, a vital part of the whole process. The solution is simple: destroy it by any means necessary. Of course, they'll have to find a way out of the caves first, but once they do, my priority would be to lead an expedition back down there and cut the evil out at its source. Since it's a campground, they should have plenty of improvised weapons laying around to smash that thing into a bloody pulp, or even try poisoning it with corrosive chemicals that they have available. If they really wanted to get the job done, then I'd load up on fuel and douse both the heart itself and the ritual chamber before getting to a safe distance and setting off an explosion that would hopefully collapse the entire cave system, destroying the heart and making it impossible for whoever was causing this madness to ever get back to their source of power. They say you can't fight what you don't understand, but I don't need to understand how or why it got there. There's simply no natural reason for such an abomination to exist, which means that destroying it can only be a net positive. Oh, it's terrifying for sure, but once these girls make it back to the surface, now at least they'll know where to start. While Sydney tends to Alice's wound, she notices that the strange red moss growing all over the walls is the same type that's been infecting the outhouse, meaning that they've actually been right below the camp the whole time. Now, to find their way out, all they need to do is follow the smell. Back at camp, The counselors gather everyone in the mess hall, while Nick and his friend Gary go out searching for everyone who's still missing. That's when Ziggy remembers that they forgot Sheila back in the toilet and decides to go and rescue her on her own. Two of the missing counselors are hooking up in one of the cabins, but unfortunately, someone else is about to find them before Nick does. After hearing a noise, this girl Joan gets up and finds the cabin door cracked open, only to be immediately ambushed by Tommy, who's already waiting in the shadows. He nearly chops her head off before she even has a chance to react, making 3 victims down, with 8 more to go. At the Sunnyvale base, the team's jailer hears Counselor Nick calling out that the game is over and leaves the Shadyside prisoners alone in the darkness while he goes to investigate. Without a lantern, they're forced to use matches to see, which is when Tommy attacks, brutally killing them all and making 6 victims down, with 5 more to go. When Ziggy finally gets to the outhouse, she's quickly ambushed by Sheila, who's furious and looking for a fight. Meanwhile, down in the cave, Cindy and Alice follow the smell until they find themselves directly below one of the toilets, where they can hear the girls battling it out up above. Ziggy knocks Sheila out cold just as Gary arrives to back her up, and that's when they hear her sister yelling from inside the hole. Thinking quickly, she lowers a bucket on a rope down into the cave, planning to use it to pull the 2 girls up. Alice goes first and nearly makes it up to safety when Tommy decides to crash the party, decapitating Gary with 1 strike and sending the girl and his headless body both tumbling back into the depths. That makes 7 victims down, with 4 more to go. After narrowly avoiding his attack, Ziggy has no choice but to leave the girls behind and run for her life. As she flees through the woods, Ziggy ends up crashing headlong into Nick, and they decide to take cover in the reptile house while they figure out what they should do. They don't have long to think it over though, because Tommy was following close behind and lets himself in through the locked door, ready to make them his next victims. While searching around, he decides to chop open one of the snake tanks, setting the creature free. Ziggy and Nick try to remain quiet as the creature slithers over to their hiding place, but the snake is about to be the least of their worries, because that's when Tommy grabs her by the hair and drags her out into the open. Just when he's about to deliver the killing blow, Nick shoves Ziggy out of the way, taking an axe wound to the back of the leg instead. He's hurt, but for some reason, Tommy goes after Ziggy without finishing the job, forcing her to run back out into the woods. She makes it to the mess hall just as the bus evacuating the campers pulls away, leaving her trapped with Tommy closing in. Without a way to climb out of the cave, the girls realize that they'll need to find a different escape route. That's when Alice points out that, according to the legend, the witch emerged at the town meeting house, which is now the camp mess hall. Thinking that this must be the ticket, she tells Cindy to go on without her, saying that her injury will only slow them down. Sure enough, Cindy finds her way to another hidden crawl space that leads to a metal grate directly below the camp mess hall. At the same moment, Ziggy runs inside, turning on a speaker and using rock music for cover, while she attempts to hide from her sister's rampaging boyfriend. Okay, we're getting down to the wire here, so it's time to start making the right decisions fast. Because she's going up against a stronger, demonically possessed opponent who's wielding an axe, it might seem like Ziggy's best bet here is to find a good hiding place and wait for rescue, but there's a problem. The reality is that there's only a limited number of places that she can choose other than running out into the dark woods. And evil Tommy very much knows that she's somewhere in the camp, which makes it a good chance that sooner or later she's going to have to fight. Knowing this, it'd be better to attack first while she still has the element of surprise, but she also may not want to outright kill him just yet, in case there's a way to lift the curse. So here's what I'm thinking. Ziggy should start by finding a blunt object, and since she's already in the mess hall, what better weapon could there be than the trusty old frying pan? Just be sure to pick a heavy one, because she's going to need to make her shots count. Once she's armed, she should use the environment around her to lure Tommy into a trap, before jumping him when his back is turned, and hopefully knocking him out cold. With Tommy down for the count, she can disarm him and use any rope or chains from around the camp to restrain him, making it so that even if he does wake up before they find a solution, he won't be able to come after them. It's going to be a tough battle, but it'd be better to go down fighting than to get caught defenseless, so she needs to make the best of any opportunity that she has while there's still a chance. Tommy follows her trail of bloody footprints until he comes to the locked pantry door, chopping his way inside like Jack from The Shining. Ziggy is waiting for him in the shadows, but instead of slicing his hand when he reaches through to open the door, she waits for her moment and sneaks up on him from behind, stabbing Tommy directly in the chest. Normally, this would mean a fatal blow, but the maniac seems unfazed, and he drops Ziggy with a vicious right hook to the side of the head before slamming her into the shelves and nearly choking her to death. At the last moment, she slips a burlap sack over his head, disorienting him and giving her an opportunity to take the offensive once again. It's a good try, but unfortunately, the victory is short-lived because Tommy quickly headbutts her off, and now he's got a cool mask to match his axe-murdering ways. Terrified, Ziggy here runs back into the kitchen, but doesn't get far before Tommy knocks her to the ground. Just when he's about to finish her off, Cindy manages to break through the hole in the floor, sneaking up from behind and shanking Tommy in the back with a huge kitchen knife, before stabbing him 2 more times in the chest when he turns around. That's enough damage to put him down, at least for now. And instead of running for their lives, the girls decide to do the more important thing and have a heart-to-heart right next to his corpse. At least they've finally patched up their relationship. But while they're talking, Alice comes crawling up out of the hole, and she's found something that could end the curse for good: the severed hand of Sarah Fear. As the girls are checking it out, a drop of Ziggy's blood accidentally gets on the hand, permanently connecting her and the witch. From what they understand, there's only one way to stop the killings, and they'll need to unite the hand with the rest of the witch's body under the hanging tree before it's too late. Meanwhile, down in the cave, the beating heart is going crazy, and humanoid figures made from its flesh begin crawling out. The cursed names on the wall are running down like blood, and as the girls leave, Tommy's body starts to move again. Okay, this can't be good. But now that they have the witch's hand, they also have their best chance to end the curse once and for all. They'll need to be careful how they proceed though, because clearly these killers aren't about to let them go without a fight. In most scenarios, I'd be strongly against splitting up, since having a meat shield around is always better than not. But in this case, splitting up is exactly what they need to do. Now, whoever has the hand is probably going to be doing the most danger, so Cindy here should take it since she's the older sister, and make a beeline straight for the hanging tree to reunite it with the witch's body. Meanwhile, Ziggy should run for the road and try to get help from the nearest town, hopefully taking some heat off of her sister in the process. While the other girls are taking care of their jobs, Alice should stay here at camp due to her busted ankle, making it difficult for her to run, and focus on distracting as many of the attackers as she can by using the environmental advantages that the buildings provide. Here, she'll have plenty of doors, furniture, and weapons to slow them down, meaning that she could help out as much as possible while working within the limitations of her injury. If she can, she should try trapping the killers inside of the mess hall itself, before finding a way to blow up that tank of natural gas that's sitting outside. Not only would this incinerate the attackers, but the explosion might hopefully be large enough to cave in the tunnels below, destroying the heart and ritual chamber, and making it impossible for any more evil minions to come crawling up out of there. You see, this is their last chance, and if they make the right calls, then they just might survive. But we're about to find out the hard way that things aren't as simple as they seem. At first, Cindy wants Alice to stay behind because of her injury, but the girl insists on helping them, seeing this as the only way to get closure for the curse that's been plaguing her town for generations. After pleading her case, the sisters finally agree, but no sooner do they decide to band together and do this for the neighborhood than a resurrected Tommy buries his axe into Alice's chest, dropping her to the floor. Furious, Cindy drives her shovel into his neck, pinning him to the wall and chopping his head clean off. Tommy's down for the count once again, but unfortunately, Alice isn't going to make it to see their plan through, and the injured girl dies in Cindy's arms, making 8 victims down, with 3 more to go. There's no time to mourn, because now even more of the killers are coming after them, forcing the girls to take the witch's hand and run for the tree. The girls dig for their lives as the killers close in from all sides, but all that they find is a memorial stone with no signs of the body anywhere in sight. They're surrounded, and Cindy tells Ziggy to run for safety, shoving her out of the way as she attacks Tommy with a shovel. It's a valiant effort, but she's no match for the undead horde. And while Ziggy looks back towards her sister, another killer emerges from the shadows, stabbing her directly in the stomach. The girls collapse to the ground as the killers lay into them with their weapons, looking into each other's eyes while they take their final breaths. As they die, the killers disappear, and that makes 10 victims down with only one survivor, but the story isn't over yet. At the last moment, Nick comes running over and somehow manages to revive Ziggy using CPR. As she's loaded into the ambulance, she mentions that her real name is Christine, revealing that she's actually the woman who's been telling the story and bringing us back to Dina and Josh in 1994. Although Cindy and Ziggy's plan didn't work out, it might have if they'd only been able to find the witch's body. Well, it just so happens that Dina and Josh know exactly where her remains are located, which means if they can find the hand, then there's a good chance that they could end the curse for good. The trail leads them back to the Shadyside Mall, which is built on top of where Camp Nightwing used to stand. Beneath the tree growing in the food court, they unearth Sarah's hand and set off for the site of the car accident to unite it with her body once again. With Josh keeping a lookout from the road, Dina returns the hand to its final resting place. As she does, she's suddenly overtaken by a series of visions, now seeing through the eyes of Sarah Fear herself all those years ago. It's time to uncover the real truth about the curse, way back where it all began, in the settlement of Union, year 1666. Okay, we're getting closer to the truth, but there's still a little bit further to go. Up next, we've got a heaping helping of Puritan pandemonium, and a sinful secret that's going to change everything. Plus, we're going to choose our worst mistake yet, and even award someone with the title of Top Survivor. That is, if anyone's still left standing. Welcome to... It's time to end the curse once and for all, but first, we'll see things from the witch's perspective and find out the truth behind her evil deeds. Dina, now seeing through the eyes of Sarah Fear, goes about her day in the Puritan settlement of Union, making plans with her friends to meet up for a party in the woods after nightfall. It seems like everyone her age is going to be there, including Hannah Miller, the pastor's daughter, and Sarah's secret crush. In her travels, she brings one of their newborn piglets over to Solomon Good, a friendly homesteader living on the outskirts of town who's recently lost his wife and daughter due to illness. He warns her not to go out that night with the other kids, saying that nothing good can come from it. Still, she ignores him and chooses to go anyway, but that was her biggest mistake. On their way out to the woods, Sarah, Hannah, and their friend Lizzie stop by the hut of a reclusive medicine woman to pick up some hallucinogenic berries for the party. When they get there, the woman is nowhere in sight, and while searching for the berries, they end up finding more than they bargained for. Hidden inside of a small wooden box is a mysterious book filled with incantations, instructions for rituals, and the names of demons. As Sarah reads from the passages, the medicine woman appears behind her, warning the girl that if she isn't careful, then she'll end up possessed herself, and sending them all running out into the night. Okay, Sarah here needs to be careful. Of course, we already know how this is going to end, but if she'd made wiser decisions, then she might have avoided her terrible fate. Clearly, Sarah is completely innocent, at least for now. But if there's one person who might be up to something, then it would be that medicine woman with a book full of black magic. As if that wasn't a red flag on its own, both the women and Solomon specifically warned her not to go gallivanting around in the woods with the rest of the kids her age. And you can call me no fun if you want, but personally, I'd listen, especially after the lady with an apparent fixation on demons told me that I might end up possessed. The key to survival is understanding your environment. Although in modern times, people with interest in the occult and nighttime raves in the woods are hardly enough to raise an eyebrow. For a girl living in a 17th century religious settlement, the situation is completely different. Here, playing by the rules can quickly become a matter of life or death, and the sad truth is that whoever snitches first usually comes out on top. For Sarah, the moment that she saw that book, it was time to embrace her inner narc and go straight back to town to tell the pastor what her berry dealer was up to. It's a cutthroat move that could end with the woman being killed, but from a purely survivalist perspective, I'd rather have her answer for her own choices than risk the chance of getting wrapped up in them myself once the angry mob starts pointing fingers. Despite the warning signs, Sarah here seems determined to party on, and unfortunately, it's not going to work out in her favor. When they finally reach the party, the girls quickly eat the berries and immediately slip into a hallucinatory daze. Annoyed at the unwanted advances of one of the guys there, Sarah and Hannah decide to run off on their own deeper into the forest in search of a little privacy. They start making out as soon as they think they're alone, only to hear a noise from the shadows and realize that someone may have been watching. In a panic, they run back to the village out of fear of being caught, although Sarah says that she finally feels alive now that they've openly expressed their love for each other. At first, everything seems fine, but in the morning, Hannah comes over looking like she's just seen a ghost. Something's happened to her father, and overnight, he's transformed into a babbling madman, staring off into the distance and speaking to himself as if he's become possessed. Just then, Hannah's mother walks in, furious to see Sarah there, and shouting that one of the local boys saw what they were up to in the woods. As she throws Sarah out into the yard, the girl notices that everyone in town is gathered around, staring at her as if they know her secret. Things only start to get worse from there. Somehow, the town's food has been spoiled, the water is poisoned, and the livestock have all gone insane. Hidden in the well, the townsfolk discover the body of Sarah's family dog, saying that it must be the work of the devil, and beginning to point fingers at any suspects, with Sarah herself at the top of the list. Later that day, Solomon stops in for a visit, and Sarah confides in him about what happened back in the woods. She's convinced that they were visited by an evil spirit, and that everything that's been going wrong in town could be coming as a consequence for her actions. Reassuring her, Solomon insists that someone can't summon the devil without first choosing to let him in, and encourages Sarah to come and see him if she needs any more help. Just when it seems like things are starting to calm down, the townsfolk make the most horrific discovery of all. While they were busy doing their daily chores, the pastor lured all of the local children to the meeting house and locked them inside, and is now refusing to open the door. Hurrying over, Solomon manages to burst in through the back entrance, but warns everyone to stay back when he sees what's inside. It's a horrifying scene, with the children slumped over in the pews, and the pastor standing at the pulpit. He's gouged out everyone's eyes, including his own, leaving himself as the only survivor. Chaos erupts as the bystanders finally burst through the door and witness the unholy carnage. In the confusion, the pastor descends into the crowd and makes a beeline for Sarah, but Solomon pierces his side with a pitchfork, stopping him just in time. That night, the citizens hold a meeting at Town Hall, determined to get to the bottom of what caused the pastor's rampage. It doesn't take long before they start throwing Sarah and Hannah under the bus, accusing them of witchcraft, and by the time that the meeting is over, there's an angry mob looking for justice. Just then, they notice the girls watching through the window and immediately rush outside to chase them down. As they run for their lives, Hannah stumbles and is caught, forcing Sarah to flee into the woods and leave her friend behind. Okay, and there you have it, folks. Not 24 hours have gone by since their harmless party in the woods, and there's already an angry mob coming for Sarah's life. I hate to say I told you so, but Sarah, you f***ed up. I think you were the only one who didn't see this coming. Even poor Hannah here tried her best to get you to be more careful, but you decided to throw caution to the wind when you knew damn good and well that the punishment would be horrifically severe if you were caught. That night was your chance to come clean about what you found back at the medicine woman's cabin. But since you didn't tell anyone the truth until it was already too late, now all of the fingers are pointed squarely at you. Once a mob like this gets going, they won't stop until they get their justice, which unfortunately means your death. The warning signs were as clear as can be, but you still went out and partied anyway. And now I have to ask, was it worth it? Putting your own life at risk is one thing, but now the mob is going after Hannah too, and they'll kill her unless you can somehow find a way to prove your innocence. Good luck with that. This all could have been avoided if you'd just thrown the medicine woman under the wagon and started an official investigation. But now, the town is poisoned, a dozen innocent kids are dead, your girlfriend's a hostage, and a demonic curse is about to be unleashed on the innocent citizens of Shadyside for centuries to come. The worst part is, everyone's going to blame you. For this, I'm bestowing upon you our first ever Biggest Screw Up Award, and there's really no competition. I'm still rooting for you here, but there's no two ways about it. Sarah, you f***ed up. With the townspeople spread out and on the hunt, Sarah quickly ducks back to the last place that anyone would suspect, the town hall, where she finds Hannah in chains. The girl tells her to run, but she refuses to leave her to be hanged. Things aren't looking good, but that's when Sarah says that she has a plan. Since everyone in town already believes that they've made a deal with the devil, then she's going to make it true, and by doing so, hopefully find a way to save both of their lives. Determined to set things right, Sarah returns to the medicine woman's hut in search of the Book of Forbidden Knowledge. But what she finds there is even worse. Not only is the book gone, but the woman lies dead on the floor with her throat slashed so deeply as to nearly sever her head. With nowhere else to turn, Sarah runs off to find Solomon, her only remaining friend, but she's about to realize that she isn't the only one in town with something to hide. Solomon lets her in to take shelter, but it isn't long before the townspeople show up demanding to search the property. In the confusion, Sarah manages to slip down into the crawl space below the house. There, she finds a strange tunnel leading to a ritual chamber, with the witch's mark carved into the stone and signs of a recent animal sacrifice. At the foot of the altar lies the book, and Sarah suddenly realizes that it was Solomon striking deals with the devil all along. Before she can escape, Solomon corners her in the chamber, explaining that he offered up the pastor's soul in exchange for more wealth and power than praying could ever bring. He tries to bring her in on his plan, saying that they're more alike than they are different, but Sarah refuses, stabbing him in the stomach the moment he gets close. Injured, Solomon falls to the ground, but before Sarah can escape, he grabs her by the ankle and strikes her hard across the face with a nearby stone. Using a torch to fend him off, she retreats deeper into the caves, with the crazed man chasing her through the darkness. Sarah's already seen enough to know that this can't be good, but lurking in the shadows is the most horrific sight yet. Fleeing through the tunnels, she stumbles into a chamber where the devil's beating heart has grown up through the rocks. Terrified, she presses on, until finally coming to a room where she can see daylight above, although she'll have to scale the walls to make her escape. Okay, Sarah here's just uncovered the twisted truth behind the curse that's plaguing the town, but she still has a long way to go before she'll be safe again. She's made it to the light at the end of the tunnel, but Solomon could be just a few steps behind. Knowing this, it's better to take him out now while she has the element of surprise than to risk him catching up with her while she's vulnerable and trying to escape. The greatest advantage that she has going for her is the low light of the cave system. Since it's nearly impossible to see anything, Solomon isn't really following her, but instead he's following the light produced by her torch. What Sarah should do here is keep moving until she reaches a fork in the tunnels, before placing her torch at one end while waiting in the darkness for Solomon to take the bait, and then quickly jumping him from behind when he does. It's going to make things more difficult, but the ideal outcome here would be to knock him out while still keeping him alive. That way, he can stand trial for his crimes and clear her name. There should be plenty of loose rocks around that might do the trick. She just needs to be careful not to hit him too hard and accidentally kill him before she can reveal the truth. Now, if everything goes according to plan and she manages to bring Solomon to justice, then the next step would be to destroy the heart, ritual chamber, and anything else witchy that he might have back at his cabin. After that, it's time to bring in a pastor from another settlement, since Pastor Miller took an unexpected retirement, and have them sanctify the corrupted land, especially performing an exorcism on the entire town. This should clear out any residual evil that might still be lurking below the surface. And the citizens of Union and Shadyside can live their lives in peace once again. Unfortunately, we already know that things are going to end differently for Sarah here, and we'll have to see if Dina can use what she's learned to finally bring the nightmare to an end. Sarah begins her ascent, but just as she starts to make progress, Solomon jumps her from behind, dragging her back down to the cave floor. In the scuffle, he lunges at her with a knife and ends up tearing her hand clean off as she tries to get free. Solomon falls backwards and hits his head on the wall, knocking himself unconscious and buying her a chance to run for her life. At the end of another tunnel, Sarah finally finds an exit to the surface, breaking through the floorboards of a building and ending up right back in the meeting hall. With nowhere else to run, she throws open the doors and sees Hannah chained to the well, only for Solomon to appear behind her, grabbing her by the hair and announcing to everyone in town that he's finally caught the witch. It's the end of the line for Sarah, but as the townspeople prepare to string her up, she decides to confess, taking the blame and telling them all exactly what they want to hear in order to get Hannah Dina off the hook. As Solomon prepares her execution, she promises him that one day the truth will come out, and until then, she'll haunt him for all of eternity. With that, the alleged witch, Sarah Fear, is hanged and buried beneath the tree. By nightfall, the other young people of the town decide to give her a proper burial, moving her body to a secret location where she rests until this day. In death, her curse fell upon the land, her spirit determined to one day bring the truth to light and stop the good family from prospering at the expense of the town. Dina snaps back into reality just as police sirens are closing in, but now she knows the truth. The sheriff, Nick Good, must be the one summoning the killers, and only by stopping him can the curse finally be lifted. Dina rushes up from the woods just as the sheriff arrives on the scene, grabbing her brother and running back into the trees to hide. Determined to stop them, he pursues the kids into the forest, but they manage to slip past him before stealing his squad car and speeding back towards the town. Arriving back at the house, they explain the truth to Christine, saying that the only way to stop the killings is to get rid of Nick Good. There's just one problem. She's already called him, thinking that he could help, which means that the most dangerous man in town is on his way to them as they speak. Before putting their plan into action, they decide to bring one more person in for help. The mall's janitor, Martin, who Josh made friends with after helping him escape from police custody the previous day. Seeing a cop car pull up at his house, Martin immediately assumes that he's under arrest. But when he realizes that it's only Josh, and they want him to help kill the sheriff, he enthusiastically agrees. The plan is simple. Using the security gates on each of the mall's stores and a bucket full of Dina's blood, they're going to lure out the killers and trap them inside, leaving them uninterrupted while they wait for Sheriff Good. Then, once he's arrived, they'll douse him in Sam's blood, turning his own minions against him. With the plan set, Dina gathers everyone together for one last pep talk, gassing them up for the fight, with Martin looking like he has no idea what the hell he's just gotten himself into. This is it. They're going to end things here and now, for the friends that they've lost, and for all of the people of Shadyside. Before the killers arrive, they scramble around the food court, setting up several improvised traps, and using super soakers to make trails of Dina's blood leading into various stores around the building. Once everything is set, they cut the power and switch over to black lights. Now, all that they can do is wait. Okay, the plan is solid, but there's a few issues that they might be overlooking. First of all, trapping the killers behind the security gates seems like a great idea, but what's to stop them from just breaking out through the huge glass windows on the other side of the door? If the glass is reinforced, then they probably won't be able to smash their way through. Still, I wouldn't be willing to bet my life on it, which is why they need a backup plan. Here's what I'm thinking. Since the killers are only really after Dina here, they should take some time to plan out a route that she can lead them through if they manage to break out before Good arrives. Along the way, they could set up traps and obstacles that she can activate to slow them down, essentially leading the killers on a wild goose chase all around the mall, until they can move into phase 2 of the plan. The others can even help out to some degree without putting their lives at risk, as long as they're careful not to directly interfere with any of the attackers. When Good finally arrives on the scene, taking him out then becomes priority number 1. Using the killers to do the job is a fantastic idea, but there's no reason to wait if they have the opportunity to do it themselves. Good is going to be expecting trouble, but he most likely won't be expecting an ambush. And the mall is such a large area that there are really limitless opportunities to get the jump on him and finish the job. Once the killers are safely behind bars, everyone should cover a different entrance to the mall and attempt to take Good by surprise the minute that he steps through the doors, only resorting to releasing the killers if they absolutely have to, which would reduce the number of potentially dangerous variables at play. It's time for the final showdown. They're well prepared and have the element of surprise, so let's see how their plan plays out. It doesn't take long before someone shows up, but it's not who they were expecting. 2 unrelated officers from the town catch them hiding inside while responding to the call about the stolen squad car. The others try to explain what's going on, but that won't be necessary, because within an instant, one of the undead killers shows up and stabs an officer through the neck, which definitely gets the point across. Horrified, the other officer empties his revolver into the attacker's back. But the man only turns and stabs him too, killing them both. Martin here is terrified, but Christine reminds him that as long as he doesn't try to get in their way, the killers will walk right past him, crouched at the entrance to their respective stores. Everyone waits nervously as one by one the killers fall for the trick, dropping the gates and leaving them trapped inside. Regrouping back at the pizza shop, the team confirms that they now have 4 killers under control. The Milkman, the Grifter, Nightwing, and Skullmask are all trapped, but unfortunately there's still more to go. And that's when they realize that it's quiet. Too quiet. Sheriff Good has arrived, and they scramble all over the counter to begin the next phase of the plan. When he goes to the food court, Christine is already there waiting for him. As soon as he gets close, she covers him in the bucket of Dina's blood, tagging him as the target while the others set the trapped killers back on the loose. Thinking quickly, he grabs Christine before she can escape, threatening to kill her unless Dina calls the killers off. Luckily, Skullface creeps up from behind and stabs him in the back. But now Christine is covered in Dina's blood too, making her a target as well. While Good struggles against Skullface, Dina steps out from her hiding spot and uses her blood as a distraction. It works, and the killers turn their attention to her as she chases the sheriff into a maintenance area, while the others take cover inside one of the stores. At the end of the hall, she crawls through a grate in the floor, realizing that it leads down into the tunnels where the ritual site is hidden. Back upstairs, the others realize that they can use Dina's blood to turn the killers against each other, sending them into an all-out brawl, which should keep them occupied for now. There's still one other variable to account for though, and that's when they notice Sam chasing Dina through the service doors into the tunnels below. The killers are down for now, but within an instant, even more start showing up. And to make matters worse, they are completely out of Dina's blood. Martin and Christine figure that the best plan is to just wait it out, but Josh is determined to protect his sister, grabbing Tommy's axe as he prepares to fight. Sneaking up behind Ruby, Josh brings the axe down into her neck, but the woman quickly recovers, spinning around and slashing him across the stomach. Just when it looks like she's about to kill him, Christine uses one of the officer's pistols to shoot Ruby in the back of the head, taking her down and saving his life. Okay, the situation is getting complicated. They've got more killers than they can handle, and Dina is officially on her own. But things might not be as bad as they seem. Josh here is champ for defending his sister, even when it puts his own life in danger. But the others might have been right about the best option being just to stay out of it, although it's not for the reason that they think. Consider this. Good here is still covered in Dina's blood, which means that the killers are just likely to attack him as they are her. By standing back and letting them do their thing, there's a fairly high chance that they'll end up taking out the sheriff first. And just like that, the whole problem is solved. It might not be the most heroic choice, but this is one of the rare occasions where doing nothing at all just might be exactly what you should do. For Dina, she's essentially in the same position here as Sarah was when she was being hunted down by Solomon. The tunnels may be horrifyingly dark, but this can easily work to her advantage if she makes the right moves. Luckily, she has a working headlamp, so just like before, what she needs to do is use the light to lure the sheriff into a trap, like an anglerfish hunting its prey. Trick him into following the light, sneak up from behind, go in for the kill, and the battle's over. Nice and easy. It's do or die time, and hopefully Dina can get the job done before it's too late. Meanwhile, down in the tunnels, Dina is suddenly attacked from behind, but it isn't the sheriff, it's Sam. And Dina here manages to briefly break the spell by using the power of friendship, only to immediately grab her by the head and slam her down into the stone floor, knocking her unconscious. The danger isn't over yet though, because she ends up crawling right into the shoes of the sheriff himself, and he's wielding a big-ass knife, stabbing her in the chest. He tackles Dina to the ground and holds the knife to her throat, saying that he's going to kill them all and pin the whole thing on her, just like his family's been doing for generation after generation. That's when Dina grabs his hand and forces him to touch the devil's heart, sending him into a panicked frenzy where he's so distracted by the visions of his victims that he forgets she even exists. Dina, however, hasn't forgotten about him, and she lunges forward, stabbing the sheriff straight through the eye. In an instant, all of the killers explode into a swarm of flies, and the heart disintegrates back into the earth. Sam here is alive and well, finally returned to the land of the living, and even Dina managed to survive unscathed. having wisely crafted a knife-proof vest out of books that she gathered from the mall before the fighting started. In the ritual chamber, all of the names of the former killers disappear from the wall, and below them, the witch's mark is gone. Crawling out through a tunnel, they emerge into the sheriff's house, and watch as his brother, the town's mayor, is suddenly hit by a passing garbage truck. It looks like things are back to normal for the people of Shadyside, but before we go, it's time to pick our top survivor. And who else could it be but the man with the plan, Mr. Steal Your Girl himself, the heartbreaker and life taker, Josh Johnson. He might be the youngest, but without this guy, they probably wouldn't have even made it through part 1. When danger came knocking, he was always the first on the front lines, and anytime they were out of options, he came in clutch with a brilliant plan to save the day. Josh, you made me proud, and I'd be honored to have you on the team anytime. Now get back to gaming and running those chat rooms, King. You deserve it. The curse is finally lifted, and their lives are turning around. Josh gets to meet his online crush. Martin goes back to selling random electronics in the high school parking lot, and the girls decide to have a picnic and make out at the most romantic place of all, the unmarked grave of the witch Sarah Fear. Finally, the citizens of the town can live in peace. That is, until someone finds the ritual chamber and steals the book of forbidden knowledge. Because in Shadyside, people just can't let evil lie undisturbed. I think you know where this is going, but that, my friends, is a story for another time. Whew! That was exhausting, but we got through it. Our longest episode yet. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed Fear Streets Volume 1 through 3. Thank you so much for watching. It's been a long one, so we're gonna get up out of here. Happy Halloween, and have a damn good day.